Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside, and welcome to my messy desk. We're just going to adjust that just a little bit so you can't see my stack of notes and my books and movies and things that I want to get to. I want to make sure that, as I have this few days, weeks off, that I'm able to get some things accomplished for myself at the same time, be able to dig in a little bit deeper and build a little bit of that momentum. It is because it is momentum in that absorption and in that experiencing of whatever comes across my path. And yes, I initiate a lot of what comes across my path, but not all of it is useful, right? A lot of it is in that monotony of my day where I'm just looking to be entertained because I'm bagged or I've overexerted myself or I just can't take one more thought from that person, whoever is, right? Got something to say, and I'm sitting there as a student taking it in. And even in that, there are lessons in that, in what holds my attention and what doesn't hold my attention. I don't waste any time. If I go into some content, I will give it an honest and fair minute or two to catch my attention. But being in social media myself, I know that I only have 5 seconds to catch your attention, that you might give me another 5 seconds if I do catch your attention in that moment. And everybody in this world is vying for attention, not just in social media, but in school, our parents being all frustrated, and we're just going to send some good cheer out there. I live behind a fire station, and on occasion, the fire trucks and the paramedics will drive by. Hopefully, they will get to their destination, and it'll turn out to be a false alarm. That is my wish every time I throw that out there, right? That one affirmation. And, you know, talking about affirmations, I was just kind of going over the past couple of weeks. If you don't know, I gave notice in that job that puts the roof over my head, feeling that it was time to move. It was time to move a long time ago, but I was procrastinating in that, understanding that it was the roof over my head, that what was going to happen, what was I going to do. But in those lessons, I'm also expected to make some movement for myself by understanding that sometimes I can't control, or I shouldn't control, that I should just allow things to play out. And I should be, in that student of the lessons out there, and I take my lessons from all kinds of sources, whether they're books, and I'm trying to get to a few books here, whether it's books or YouTube videos, or sitting in some university lectures, or conversations with strangers, right? Conversations with my sisters, right? And then just searching out better solutions for the situations that we get ourselves in. But in that reviewing of my last 2 weeks in that job that put the roof over my head, I was really amazed at how well and how tidy everything kind of ended, except I left my my favorite coffee mug at work, but I'm sure they put it away for me. They sent me a message saying that I left it there, so I'm sure they'll put it away for me. Maybe I'll go up there next week. Right now, I want to not so much enjoy, but to let my system come down to allow that settlement of acceptance of that pivot that I made in my life. And, you know, contemplating on a lot of things. And I remembered having a conversation my last day. I think it was my last day working there. And I was talking to one of my good friends there. And I was saying, I'm so grateful for my good health. My entire life I've been given affirmations in my good health, not even understanding, because I didn't wake up to any of these ideas until well into my 50s, but even unconsciously, I appreciated my good health. I appreciated, and that was because I was surrounded by people who did not feel good. My mother had 12 different types of rheumatoid arthritis. My dad, as far as I'd ever known, had a congenital heart failure and hardening of the arteries. He had a lot of issues, like in my family. Even my sisters today with the diabetes and the heart issues and stuff. You know, and when things weren't going well in my life, I didn't have anything to fall back on. I was the fat kid, I was the stupid kid, I was the useless kid. I was right, good for nothing. But I always had my good health, and I would say that, so and so, you may have this, you may have this, and yeah, sure, but I got my good health, and I would say that, and I would honestly believe that, because I didn't recognize that, this was something that I could have just as easily have fallen into. But because of those affirmations, and I do believe, my affirmations, even unaware of what I was doing, that I didn't even know what an affirmation was, that I did have that realization of how amazing it was that I had such good health, that I didn't have to worry about the issues that my mother had or the issues that my father had. And I didn't dwell on that, but it's hard not to take notice when, my dad was hunched over in an angina attack, or my mother was sitting in her chair just crying because there was just so much pain in her joints, right? And have to give myself credit that I appreciated that. If I didn't notice anything else, that I noticed the uncomfortableness, I noticed the struggle and the pain and the agony that my parents' ailments caused them in their life. So I was talking to one of my good friends, one of my customers at work, who popped in all the time. I says, I'm so grateful that I did my affirmations, that, even unconscious, that I just recognized it and just did it naturally. And which makes it honest and genuine in that, because it was something I was very grateful for. And I was saying to her, what if God, before he sends you down, right, and says, hey, this is going to be your life, but you get to have one choice. You get to have anything you want, any aspect of your life, you get to have a say. And then some people would say, I want to be rich. Some people would say, I want to be smart. I want to be beautiful. I want to be sexy, right? And then there was Cindy, who said, I wanted to be healthy, because that's what it felt like for me. Because, I look out at the world and I know and see the struggles out there when it comes to people's well being, emotionally, physically, mentally. And then to also recognize that my life did not revolve around those struggles and those agonies that make it impossible for you to enjoy being sexy, being rich, being adventurous, being beautiful, because none of that would matter without your or my good health, right? So, in that conversation, it was funny because when I was having that conversation, I kind of glanced around because these are deep conversations and I have them all the time. And that was one of the best things about the job that I had, that I was able to have these conversations. But I did look up when I was having these conversations because again, they're deep, they're important conversations, and grateful that I'm able to have these conversations. But I did notice that others were paying attention in that, right? And they were paying deep attention, like eavesdropping almost, right? And I'm a loud person, and right, and I am honored that they thought the conversation was interesting enough that they would pay extra attention in that. That's practicing my craft. It is 100% practicing my craft, but at the same time, in contemplation of those 2 weeks, oh my goodness, it sure did make me recognized, right? How much I lost, right? The gain, there is gain there, 100%. If nothing else, just in that pride in myself that I did something so difficult that needed to be done, but that I was kind of stalling out on that, right? So, you know, we make some tough decisions out there. And, one good decision was for me to follow in that leadership, that thought leadership that came across my path that caught me in a conversation, not my conversation, but somebody else having a conversation, just like somebody overhearing me. And it perked me, it caught my attention, and it made me want to learn or experience a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Those are all the prerequisites, right? I'm not a believer in the pyramid kind of idea when it comes to movement forward. But the one thing about the pyramid idea is that there are prerequisites. There's a build up and there's a structure to that build that allows you to slowly ascend to the point where, right, you are at the top ready to receive, right? And that's my idea because I have been in those pyramid scams in my life. I have been scammed. Or maybe it wasn't so much a scam, but right, the pyramid ended, the pyramid collapsed before I could reap my rewards in that. But that's the risk in our life too, right? And we have to have those adventures. And yes, they are adventures because they offer up experiences and they offer up lessons, and right. And can I say that I was never scammed that way before? Maybe not that way. It was not the first time or the last time I was scammed in that. And that's in our own gullibilities. Is that gullibility? Gull. You know what I mean, right? That I am a little bit naive that way. And it is hard for me to say no. I could save myself a lot of adventures in life if I was able to say no and put my foot down in a lot of things that, right, I'm not really drawn to. But the thing is, how am I going to know I'm drawn to it unless I have those experiences? And that was a lesson that I learned from my dad and from my husband. My husband was so amazing at that. He would recognize somebody's need before they would even have to blink an eye or say a word. And he would be the first one to volunteer for the experience, right? Of course, these were his friends, these were his brothers, these were his comrades, right? He was in the military. So of course he was going to help them out to the best of his ability. That was his nature. But he saw the adventure and he saw the opportunity to have different experiences when he was that person who offered up his time, his money, his energy, right? Or his physicality. And he didn't mind that ever. He did. And it would just amaze me. And I would just watch him and I would see how people would about him and react to him. And then the little gifts that would come that way, where the wives would bake him things or send the husband over with homemade beer, or him being lower ranking than some of the master corporals and the sergeants and stuff, and yet they respected him so much that he hung out with these people that were above his standing, right? That he wasn't in that class. He was a private and he was a master. Or no, he didn't even make it to master corporal. He made it to corporal, right? And yet he hung out with the master corporals and right, the sergeants. And I worked in the in the the sergeant's mess and the junior ranks. I worked in both as bartenders and I did banquets and right. And he led me in to those amazing experiences that, well, I guess that was his way of being of service. I'm just recognizing that right now, right? There are so many ways to offer up a little bit of comfort. And I could just see it in the relationships that he had with the people that he hung out with, his friends, his comrades, his master corporals, and his sergeants, right? That he all had to answer to. But he was offered up so much respect and right. I dabble a little bit, but I'm nowheres as hypervigilant in my thoughtfulness as my husband was, right? He was a sweet one for sure, and he just wasn't sweet to me. He was sweet to everybody. Okay, enough about my ex-husband. We are just going to grab my cards here. We're going to grab a word, just go into it for a couple of minutes. I just wanted to share that in those affirmations. I believe that those affirmations that I have been putting out to the world, to the universe, my entire life, like I said, I didn't wake up into any of these ideas until well into my 50s. But you know what? I recognize that something served me well, right? And we all do. And I recognize that early. And I'm so grateful that I stayed on it in paying attention to my well being. Probably not, because I managed to get to 311 pounds at one point. And, I do think I'm 20 sometimes. And so I do physically push myself a little bit harder than, right, for my age. I should slow down a little bit. But my good health, right? It doesn't let me recognize my age sometimes. And, I do poop out. I went for a good 6 kilometer walk yesterday, day before yesterday. I went for a nice long walk and I ended up having to hop a bus in the last, it was kind of shameful. It was only like a quarter mile or anything, but the bus was coming. I was done. I had been done for a long time in that walk, but it was my first walk of spring. And, I have to give myself credit because the sidewalks were pretty icy and I probably was a little bit, right, paying attention to the sidewalks and clenching my toes and stuff, and my feet hurt towards the end. But I was pretty proud of myself that I was out there. Now I don't know why I was talking about my walk. Oh, about my well-being, right? Oh, well, that's about as close as it gets to my well-being. Is in my walks these days, right? Okay, you guys. I dropped this card, so this will be the card. It is acceptance. Just a couple of words. Acceptance. I feel I'm being asked. I feel lots of us are being asked to accept how things are. But how easy is that when you look out at the world? You look out your big picture window. You watch the headline news, and it's just like crazy town. Like crazy town. You just don't get it. You're shaking your head just like everybody else is shaking your head. Sometimes we just have to accept the state of what we're in. You know what I mean? That if we don't have something to contribute to that conversation, if we don't have that strong arm, and we should never have that strong arm and force situations, right? Because we never know how things are going to play out. I'm always one for taking things cautiously, and at the same time being a part of that majority that thinks along the same way in this moment, right? I'm just being a spectator. I'm paying attention in my hypervigilance, of course, right? I am a little bit hypervigilance because I do understand the concept of catalysts. And when you look out at the world and you see the crazy town, you see it. It's hard to ignore, but it's hard to explain too. It's so out of context. It's so out of the world. It's so unexplainable. That's when we have to just kind of accept it. Because when we say like catalysts, right? These are characters and these are experiences that are supposed to happen to trigger change into our lives. And I would be the last person to, well, put my 2 cents into that conversation that I'm really not familiar with, right? I feel that little bit of hyper vigilance in that uncomfortableness, right? But that's just because I don't quite understand what's going on. And I think a lot of that crazy town is just the evidence that none of us really know what's going on. So just accept that sometimes it's best just to be a spectator, to pay attention, right? Pay attention to what's there. And unless we're compelled to jump into the conversation or to jump into that mix because we've got something up our sleeves that might help the situation, right? Sometimes it is better just to accept and just allow those cards and those experiences to play out the way they're supposed to play out. I do believe they're going to play out exactly the way they play out. But, right, we could agitate the situation even more, right? Things happen for a reason, right? And things happen for no reason at all. And we should pay attention to that just as much as we should pay attention to what's right in our faces. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. I'll see you tomorrow.